Right, guys, we've got a list of questions that you have sent in for us to answer. One of the questions is, do you use a bird hide for most of your photos? If yes, what does it look like? Well, up on the screen there's a photo of the hide that we do use, and no, not most of the photos come from the bird hide. Most of the photos just come from walking around the bush and just doing the general thing. But yeah, the bird hide is really handy though to get some really close up images and sharp images of your bird, and it works a treat. That was taken, that's a location that some of you guys will know in town if you've been blindfolded when you've been taken to it. So, but the hide's there, well, for anyone to use.
Yeah,
It's,
anyone
it just
to use
stays.
if they want to.
It's been out the bush now for
And
5, 6, 7 months now.
Yeah, and I've got mine out there as well. So,
And Wayne's is on the other side of the bit of place we go to. But yeah, the next image will show you what you see when you're looking out the hide. So that's looking out the hide to the little
water container.
There's a little perch that sits there as well. So that's probably, I think, 5 metres, 5 metres from the camera.
Yeah.
So yeah, the birds are quite happy. You just sit there and dwindle away. The morning goes really quick when you're sitting in there, because some days you'll get a lot of birds and some days you won't get any. And it's hit and miss what turns up. But yeah, no, it's quite good.
Yeah, so that's the hides.
That's the bird hide.
Yep, the bird hide, and in the summertime they're like a little sauna, so you can lose a bit of weight.
Absolutely.
Very hot.
Right, so we've got another question. I would like to understand how close you guys get to a bird before you take the photo.
Yeah, well, basically, I mean, we'd like to get as close as possible, but you know, the smaller birds you can probably get within 5 metres, 4 metres.
Yeah.
In the likes of the hides, well, yeah, it's about the same distance. With the bigger birds, they seem to sort of get a little bit more flighty, so a bit wary of you. So, yeah, you're actually a little bit more distance there. Next, favourites? Oh, geez, it varies. I love the peregrine falcon. Basically, for what it is, I suppose it's one of the raptors, and yeah, it's very hard to sort of get close to those, but yeah, you just got to know where they are in there. I think they're called the areas. And down in Tasmania, they dated one of the areas down there back 250 years, and I don't know, carbon data or something. And they actually sort of, that's over generations and generations, they keep going back to this same spot. And the same out at Halls Gap, not Halls Gap, the Grampians, northern end of the Grampians. They've been going back there year after year too. Not the same bird, but yeah. But I love the peregrine falcon, and to see them in the wild and sort of, you know, see them sort of flying and that, and they dive in, and it's just incredible. You can see where they get the speed from. They are. Yep. At close range, yeah. Because,
absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yep.
And a lot of it's just been there at the right time.
Yeah, right time, right place.
Because you can't predict them. They're just
no, and that's why that one
getting out the bush and looking.
Yeah. Yep.
And getting in. And I know I've got a couple of farmers who'll call me up and say, Karl, there's a wedge tail on sheep carcass. So you whiz back there and, well, the birds are gone, the carcass are gone, and give me a call next time. But it's just, just get out and get out looking. But yeah, I'd probably say mine's, I like the diamond firetails. They're my go-to bird. I love them. in my aviary, and I love taking photos of them
Yeah, out in the wild.
out in the
that,
wild.
yeah,
And I had
yeah.
a couple of guys, guy from Portland had his mate from New Zealand who's a well-renowned guy in bird keeping, and they wanted to take some diamond firetails. They gave me a call. He said, we just spent the last 3 days crawling up the 18th green at the Hamilton Golf Course, and we can't get into Brass Row Zoo of these diamond firetails, which
Yeah.
he's come to Australia to try and take these photos. And he gave me a call. He said, oh, can you help us out, Karl? I said, yeah, come up. And I said, we'll just sit up on the bank here where they normally are, and we just called them in. I said, they'll come into that tree and they'll sit down kind of next to you. And sure enough, they'd done the right thing. They flew in and they sat there, and Casey's name was, he said he just couldn't believe. He said, they're nearly too close, I just can't even take a photo of them with the camera. And they were more than happy with it. So that was quite good. So we'll get to our next question. Would also like to know,
You go to ISO.
you go to ISO to avoid noise. Well,
That sort of varies a
it
lot.
varies. I know I've taken photos of ISO at 100 and there's been noise in the photos, but
Yeah.
preferably the lower the ISO, the less noise you're going to get in your image. But then saying that, the technology now, I'm quite comfortable to take a photo at 6,000 ISO,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
you
Because-
can soon get rid of the noise. It's no
Yeah.
real.
If you then go into Photoshop or you post
Key 22
editing,
is take your photo in RAW.
yeah,
And you won't have
yeah, and then
the noise is easy to get rid of.
yeah, you can get rid of most of it, and then it depends on how far you got to crop into. Otherwise, they start getting a little bit
Yeah,
funny
if
too.
you start
Yeah.
cropping into it, they'll get a bit
Yep.
noisy. What length lens do you use? Well, we're both the same. We use a 200 to 500mm Nikon, which is probably the best ultra zoom lens kind of Nikon's produced. It's
Yeah.
5.6 right through the whole
Aperture.
aperture, and it's not overpriced. It's quite reasonably priced, and the image quality is really, really good.
Yes.
And there's it's not up there with your prime lenses, but it's not far behind.
Yeah, you won't see much difference in the
A prime
quality.
lens.
It's no, they're pretty good.
No, they're really good. Even though we all would love that big prime lens,
Yeah.
that'll have to do for now. Do you use a fixed ISO or an auto ISO?
Auto.
Yeah, I use
yeah.
auto.
Auto ISO all
I
the time.
set the minimum,
Yep.
and I set the maximum of the ISO, and
Yep.
let the camera do the work.
And
But
that's and that's the next question as well. If auto ISO, what limits do you put on it? Well, as I said earlier on, that was 64 up to 4,000, and you just let that do the up and down with contrasting light.
Yep. Let the camera.
It'll do it.
The camera's there to work for you, so let it do the work.
Yep. Do you use aperture or shutter speed priority, or neither? What else do you use?
Well, Wayne, will you use manual?
I use
Solid
manual all the time, basically because of the auto ISO. I use the shutter speed, which is say 2,000 up to about 4,000, depending on the day and what I'm after. Usually about f8, and once again I then let the auto ISO sort of do its thing, so you don't miss your shot then.
And I'll use manual a lot, but I also use aperture priority a lot, just for the fact that when I'm travelling around, I'll just set the camera in aperture priority, and if there's a bird, I'll just jump out and shoot. Downfall being in aperture priority is the default setting is only around 800 on the shutter speed. So if you jump out to take a bird in flight, you may or may not get it. It will increase the shutter speed, but it's a risk you take.
Yeah, with a long lens at 500, well then you're very likely to get sort of lens movement.
But yeah. What have we got next?
Do you use spot focus or broader focus point? Does it matter which one you use, or is it one better than the other birds in flight?
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, birds in flight, I generally use a group metering.
In Nikon it's called
It's group. Yeah,
group
I know
metering?
what it is in Canon, but yeah.
Not really sure much about Canon. So yeah, group metering, group focus points. Yeah, you won't follow a bird with a single focus point.
No,
in
very
flight.
hard to get one unless it's one of the bigger birds which flying a little bit slower. But the little ones, definitely you've got to have at least group metering.
Absolutely. Do you have a broader focus point only for birds in flight? Do you use? Yes.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
You can use 3D tracking, which does work.
On the bigger birds.
Bigger birds, okay.
Yeah.
It'll track the eye of the bird. But other than that, yeah, you use a group focus to get your birds in flight.
What sort of settings do you use for birds in flight, and do you use different settings for sitting birds? Well, not really. I generally stick to the same settings because you don't know, like that a sitting bird might all of a sudden get up and take flight. So that's why I just stick to the ones that I've got, and it seems to work. Sometimes the shutter speed's a little bit high, but it's sort of worked for me anyhow.
Yeah, but in general, your birds in flight, your shutter speed's going to be a lot higher.
That's right. Yeah.
So it could be anywhere from 2,000 to 4,000 on your shutter speed just in flight.
There we go. More broadly, what are your go-to settings for birds and trees?
All depends.
Yeah.
If the birds sit in the sun or the birds sit in the shadows.
Yeah.
If you sit in the shadows, your shutter speed's going to be right down.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah. It's very hard to
But
sort of get a bird sort of like in trees where you got good light, unless they're out in the open. But the majority are sort of, you got leaves, shadows, things like that. So it's hard to sort of get them right. You just got to sort of take it as it is on the day.
Comes back to the advantage of shooting raw. You can.
Yeah, you can adjust it in that there.
Do you use front or back button focus, and why? Well, I use both. I know I pick up Wayne's camera. The front shutter button doesn't work because he doesn't like it.
I only use that to take the photo.
But yeah, the advantage of the back button focus is it's always in focus.
Yeah.
You can hold that back button in and move your camera with the bird if it's flying,
and you've got that tracking.
And it'll continually be in focus. That's where if you're solely using that front button, every time that bird moves, you've got to take your finger off and refocus. And if it's in flight and you're looking through the big lens, you're going to lose it. Yeah. It'll be gone before you, unless you're shooting with both eyes open, which I do tend to when the bird's in flight.
Yeah. And that's why
thing you do.
And that's why I generally like just the shutter to take the photo, because otherwise, if you use it with focus as well, you've got the back focus, which is you're focused, and then all of a sudden you hit the thing to take the photo, and all of a sudden it adjusts the focus again. That's why I don't use it that way. So that's why I just use it just to take the photo. That's why I always use back button focus all the time.
What is?
Don't do that, Austin.
So 3, 2, 1.
Okay, next question. How do you process your images of birds in Photoshop? Do you use a lot of things to process or just a couple? Right, this could be a whole.
Well, you could do a whole segment on
You
this
could do a whole
one.
segment on just
Yeah,
that.
but yeah, I use Photoshop, and there's a few basic things that I do, but depending on the photo as to whether it's complicated as far as twigs and things like that, or whether it's just a clean photo, how much you got to do in Photoshop.
At the end of the day, you try and take the best photo to start with.
Yeah, to start with.
To do the least amount of work.
That's right.
But
and
yeah, I don't use Photoshop. I use
But it's similar Affinity.
Affinity, which I know there's at least one other club member that uses it. It's
So basically all the same.
I can jump from Affinity to Photoshop without too much difficulty. So it's basically the same program. Only really big difference is it's a once-off payment with lifetime updates.
Whereas Photoshop's not.
Same principle. You try and get the best image you can
Yeah,
start with.
to start with, yeah.
If there are some branches and bits and pieces, easy to remove.
Yeah.
If it's a bit grainy.
But to go into the actual working of
the actual
Photoshop,
working,
you could spend another segment on this.
I don't go cutting legs off and taking them off other photos. And
No.
If the image is a little bit blurry,
Well, sometimes you just lost the shot from the start.
Lost the shot, but there's other programs you can get to take the blur out of. You get Topaz.
Yeah, Topaz, which I've got.
Sharpen
I
up
run
your image.
Topaz
That's
as well,
quite good.
and that's really good. And that's just a preset in Photoshop.
But
So basically that's all for that.
the least you can do, the better. But sometimes you do a bit. But I'm not. A little bit of sharpening, a little bit of clarity.
That's about it.
Bit of noise reduction sometimes, and really that's it.
Yeah, the essence is try and get a good shot for
Try and get a good shot to start with, and that's the key. Plus, there's another wise man told me once. He said, "What's the best time to take bird photos?" And yes, early morning. Don't worry. Use the afternoon to go scouting where you're going to go late afternoon. But if your shadow is longer than you are, tall, that's a good time to be out taking bird photos. As soon as your shadow gets smaller than you are, pack up, go home. But that's just a quick little tip. So yeah, once your shadow is longer than you are tall, keep taking photos. But
Old wise man ever pointed back to my grey beard and walked with a huge stick.
yeah, and then he just walked away and disappeared one day and never seen him again. But yeah, that's the best time.
Yeah.
And there is no, if it's overcast, cloudy day,
Yeah.
go for it.
Yep.
Yeah, overcast days you can photograph all day. Sunny days, morning, afternoon.
Yeah.
But if there's no other questions,
Wrap it up.
we'll wrap it up and call it a night. And we'll check our cameras out. Okay, these are our little toys we use. 200 to 500 Nikon tele zoom lens, which is probably the best tele zoom lens on the market, I'd say, for the price. 5.6 all the way through. They're
It's got vibration.
vibration reduction.
Reduction. It's got just auto, full. Whoops.
They're a great combo.
Yeah.
I think the D500 and that lens were kind of built together. They're just the go-to lens. But no, I've had no issues with it. Sharp, good, reasonably in low light. It's pretty good in low light. It's not fantastic, but it's pretty good. But yeah, it's a sweet, a little bit heavy sometimes.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah, it's nice. Nice lens indeed.
Yeah.
About $1,500.
Yeah, about 1,500. They come down a little bit. I think I'll that's why they're sort of within everyone's reach, really, if they're getting into this. And really, like in bird photography, like if you can get a good 300, that's okay. But you know, when you're going to pay nearly the same price of a good 300, so you might as well go to the 2 to 500. We ain't talking Nikon here, but you know, I don't
And
know
saying that, you get a nice 300 2.8, put a teleconverter on it,
yeah, and it gets,
and which is then going to be 5.6. So
yeah, that's
and
right.
to get that 2.8 300, you're going to be spending that kind of money,
Yeah,
anyway, if not
yeah.
more.
And the camera you're using, Ron?
Yeah, mine's a D500, same as Karl's. I have got the D850, but I don't use that much for the bird because this has got the crop sensor in it, which is 1.5 times, so that's why I stick to that. And it's got faster frames per second. It's 10, I think.
10
isn't it?
frames per
10
second?
frames per second. It has,
It's
yeah.
got
And
200,
yeah.
200, wow. You're taking 200 frames before she starts to slow
Yeah.
down if you're using your XQD card
Yeah, yeah.
or
I've
CF.
I've got two cards in here. One's XQD and one's the SD card, and the XQD runs at I think 400, as opposed to 90 for the SD card. That's why I have that as a prime one, and that spills over to the SD if I take, I think it's something, I don't know, about 600 photos or something. I haven't got to that yet.
No, but
So, but and you can, Karl was saying before, you can CF card, isn't it?
there is a firmware update coming out,
Yeah,
so
coming
we'll
out.
take a CF card,
Yeah, which writes faster again.
which is faster. But yeah, it's Nikon's flagship DX camera.
Yeah,
Probably, listening to some of the experts, it's probably one of Nikon's best cameras they've kind of.
yeah, for this type of work.
They're made, yeah.
Yes, yeah. And
But
they're
yeah,
very
there's
affordable, so, you know, if you're
Yeah.
getting into bird photography, well then you have to have something, you know, similar or equivalent to it. And then depends on how fussy you are with your photos, you know.
Because I started with the D5500. Great camera, I enjoyed it, but it just wasn't doing what I wanted it to do. So the upgrade, she happened, and this is,
Yeah.
very, very happy with it.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, it's,
Oh, one question I wanted to ask.
Yep.
That's all right. What's your opinion on mirrorless cameras?
I don't know a lot about them. I nearly, when I was buying the D850, I started looking at those, but if you go onto YouTube and that, the guys still reckon, I know it's a transition period to the mirrorless, and they still reckon that the D850 for that type of work was better than the mirrorless. But, you know, I mean, they come a long way, and yeah, and that's why I went to the D850.
my
so.
biggest thing with the mirrorless is I have enough trouble now with dust going on the
Yeah.
sensor, and it's covered with your shutter,
Yeah.
where the mirrorless is just out there. So I'm assuming they would have a lot of
Issues with that.
issues with
Yeah,
dust.
I think so. Yeah.
Not that it's a big issue to clean them. It's
Well, it can be.
it can be, but it's not crazy hard to do.
No.
At the end of the day,
Yeah.
your sensor is covered. It's not actually your sensor you push it on. It's
Yeah.
a bit of glass over the sensor.
And how many years, like in the future, you reckon we will predict that mirrorless will come up to the same sort of level as
Oh,
can't be SLRs?
well, they will. Yeah. It's only a matter of
eventually
time.
will.
You know, they're a lot lighter, and you know, with technology, the way it goes so quickly, they will overrun the DSLRs.
But
When
yeah,
we don't know.
but
Only because
that'd
you've
be
got
good.
the lenses
Because
and everything. Yeah.
I'm Nikon. Everyone's, and I know some Canon users would switch to Nikon. They'd be quite happy, but all their money's in their lenses, and it's just not viable to do
The
it.
switch. Oh, that's right.
switch over.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you can have cheap camera and a fantastic lens, and it's going to take a fantastic photo of his,
Yeah,
as they say, put your money in the glass.
that's,
not into
that's
your
where,
camera.
and that's where the images come from,
The
mainly.
camera,
Yeah.
You can have a cheap camera, a fantastic lens, you're going to take a fantastic photo.
Mm.
But yeah, no, I'm more than happy with the camera. And yeah, hope it gets me many, many years of
Service.
service and joy.
Yep.
One day we might go to the big prime lens, but at this stage, we'll just have to stick with.
Yeah, we'll stick with
What we
what
got.
we got, what we know.
But
Yeah.
if there's any other questions, we'll
That's
call
about
it night. And yeah,
Yeah,
put them on
yeah.
YouTube and
Yeah,
we'll
that'll
follow
be-
them up, and
Yep,
we look forward to seeing everyone
getting out there and taking
getting out. And
photos.
since we can get out now and take some photos, I expect to see a lot more photos getting posted by you guys. So have a good night, and we'll catch up
Yeah.
soon.
Next face to face.
Yeah.